Hi everyone, Bear from Bear Reads Books. Here to do an October update. It is the last day of October. By the time I put this up it could be the 1st of November for you, but this video should come just before a November update about what I'll be doing in November and I'm still not sure what I'm going to be doing in November, to be perfectly honest. It could be non-fiction November, it could be novella November, but I really don't know. October has been a tough one. So I'm just going to have a bit of a fireside chat, if you will, about pushing yourself too hard with your reading, which I think I did. And first of all, I think in October I overcommitted. And if you've watched any of the previous videos, you'd realise that October came off the back of a really nice, relaxing holiday, but it also came off the back of a brand new job. And by a brand new job, I don't mean moving from one position to another position. I'm talking about a whole new industry that I moved to. So moving out of one industry into another industry where my skills were transferable, but everything is new. And there's been a big cultural shift, and my mind has been really busy and used in ways that I haven't used my mind in a long time, so I'm tired a lot. So that's where I was at the beginning of October, and on top of that, there were all these great readathons going on. There was Victober for Victorian literature, there was Spookathon for Halloween, and there was Gone with the book for classic early 20th century Gone with the Wind type literature. And I had something to read in each of those categories without actually fixing myself to any of the criteria for those readathons. I just decided broadly to read within those broad categories of that readathon, and I had, I think, a crazy number of books that I chose, 10 I think it was. In the end, books that satisfy the criteria finished. I got through 1, 2, 3, maybe 4, with another one unfinished, and then the stuff that I had started, some of the big stuff that I had started at the beginning of October that didn't have anything to do with readathons that I wanted to finish as well, are still unfinished. So it feels like a really unproductive reading month, and I tried really hard not to let it get me down, because the books that I read and finished were amazing. Especially one, which I'm going to talk about more in depth than anything else, and because that was a book that I can't believe I've never read before, and when I read it, it really has just blown me away. So, on one hand, really unproductive in that I felt really stressed about the whole thing, and I overcommitted, and I didn't go anywhere near the amount of books that I committed myself to. But on the other hand, really productive, because the books I read, I absolutely loved. And I think that's the key. I think I've got to shift my thinking. I've got to embrace that sometimes reading is not going to go my way, and that life is just going to bump into, my real life is going to bump into my reading life. Which is what happened over and over again. In October, my reading life and my real life just passed each other in the night like strangers on a foggy evening. And I got lots of personal stuff done, I got lots of reading done, but really not happy. So let's go through first of all what I physically finished and how they fit into the different readathons. Let's try that. The very first was a book I had already started before the readathon started, but it fitted neatly into one of the readathons, which is Spook-a-thon, and that was, and I'm reading just off my Goodreads here, is My Sister the Serial Killer by Oyinkan Braithwaite. This was great. This was really good fun, and it really picked me up for the beginning of October. I thought, if this is the vibe for October, if this is the level of reading and of enjoyment I'm going to get out of this October, I'm in. I'm all in. And it was great. Absolutely fantastic. I listened to it on audiobook, and the really authentic narration for the African voices and all of the different characters was so well done, and it really immersed you into the book in a way that you probably wouldn't have got if you read the book in a physical book. Because I think if you read the book in a physical book, a lot of the accents and the nuances of the language would have not transferred. And I kind of compare it to Guy Gunaratna's, what's it called? Not In a Mad World. That's it is In a Mad World, isn't it? What's it called? In Our Mad and Furious City. In Our Mad and Furious City by Guy Gunaratna. I kind of compare it to that, where those London accents at times were so difficult to penetrate that in a written book it would have been almost impossible to try and work out what they were saying, but then put a voice behind it, put a real voice with real emotion behind it, like you get in an ebook, or sorry, in an audio book. And the power of Guy Gunaratna's voice came through on audiobook. And I think the same is the case for My Sister the Serial Killer. The voice that you would get from these African women really comes through in an audiobook, and thoroughly enjoyed it. And I know I've spoken about in videos about Toni Morrison's books about girls' relationships with their mother and girls' relationships with the men in their lives, whether that be a father or uncle or anyone. And in Toni Morrison, they're a certain way, and in different books they kind of twist and turn, and the men are horrible, and then the women are horrible, and sometimes they're good and sometimes they're bad. In My Sister the Serial Killer, you could almost picture the ending. You could almost picture why this woman was like this. And it's not a spoiler to say that the main character, or one of the main characters in this book, is actually a serial killer. The title of the book does not lie. My sister, someone's sister, the narrator's sister, is an actual serial killer. So I'm not giving anything away by telling you that. But I feel that quite early on you could see that their relationships with the men and women around them is what formed this woman into the woman she is, and what causes her to behave in the way she does. But knowing that in advance and guessing that in advance did not at all detract from the power of this little story. It's not a big book. But I just found it so enjoyable. Not scary in any way. It was done in a very light-hearted way, and the sister, so the My Sister in the My Sister the Serial Killer, the My Sister is this seemingly flighty bimbo type girl who her sister's very sensible and very measured, and she's got a proper job, and the sister of the title is this flighty, ditzy, bimbo type who's always going out with a different boy and always sleeping around, and her sister's always trying to protect her from the wrong things happening. And then pretty early on you find out that she needs protecting from her own actions, not protecting from the men around her, because if you piss this girl off, there's going to be repercussions. It's really good. The descriptions are not horrific in any way. They're not there to describe, it's not like a crime scene cleaners or anything like that. They don't even tell you too much about how people die. They kind of reveal those things in bits and pieces, but thoroughly intriguing. Really, really interesting how the book is laid out. So that was My Sister the Serial Killer. That was finished really early in October. And then after that I thought I'd jump into... let's stick with audiobooks, because that's been really good. The way, because I've got out and about and I'm doing lots of running now, so I've kind of ramped up my running, which I still can't run very far without stopping, but I'm trying really hard. I'm following a program, I'm running further every time. I do enjoy going out there, even though it hurts. But audiobooks, podcasts, that sort of thing, really good for running. and it doesn't take too much time away from my physical reading, sitting down with a book. So My Sister's Serial Killer was followed by something else that fitted into Spookathon, which is called Silver by Chris Hammer, and it's an Australian mystery thriller crime procedural, as I've talked about many times, which in Australia is going through a resurgence. There's lots of great crime writers out there at the moment that are gaining popularity all over the world as Australian authors, and it's great to see. Chris Hammer is his name. The book is called Silver. Chris Hammer is a journalist, a nationally recognised journalist who last year released a book called Scrublands, which was great, and I absorbed that so quickly. It was such an enthralling book that as soon as this one dropped, I grabbed it on Audible to do as an audiobook. I did the first one on audiobook, and I saw that the second one was using the same narrator, using the same reader for the second book. Different characters. There's no carryover. Oh yes, there is. Sorry, yeah, the journalist. It is a journalist that goes from one place to another and gets into adventures, which I kind of like. So the journalist's name, the character in the book, is called Martin Scarsden, and in the first book he was in the outbacks or in the bush getting into adventures, and now he's by the beach getting into adventures. Just the way life plays out. And it's really exciting. It's very, very good. So last year was Scrublands, this year is Silver, and really super great. So easy to listen to, and because they use the same narrator from one to the other, the guy's voice is just so engaging. It's this broad Australian accent, kind of like mine, really sexy voice. Broad Australian accent, but very, very engaging. So, and I'm still about 3/4 of the way through that. So over the top of that, why it's taken me a while to read that, is I thought I'd chuck in a, I thought I'd chuck in a Victober book on, no, not a Victober, a Gone with the Book contender. I thought I'd chuck in a Gone with the Book contender, and that ended up being Mrs. Dalloway by Virginia Woolf. Now I've got it in this little thing, in this little Macmillan version, and I started reading this little Macmillan version and it just annoyed the crap out of me because it's so small and the writing is tiny, and the pages are really thin, and so I ended up grabbing it on audiobook. I've bitten the bullet, by the way, and subscribed to Scribd, and I grabbed it on audio on Scribd. So I've ditched my Audible subscription, but still keeping everything in my library, which is nice because I've got a backlog there, and I've picked up Scribd, and I may swap and go back one to the other, I don't know, but we'll try and Scribd. So I grabbed Mrs. Dalloway on Scribd and listened as an audiobook, and it was great. Such a good thing. And this is what kept me going in October when I was finding it so tough, was the books that I chose were so good. And I've spoken about some of them already, but the books that I chose were amazing. And I said this before, I can't believe I've never read Mrs. Dalloway before. I've read Virginia Woolf before. I think Room of One's Own I think I've read, but never Mrs. Dalloway. And I just found the wit and the humour, and Mrs. Dalloway is just beautiful as a character. She's lonely, and how do you describe Mrs. Dalloway? She's incredibly intelligent and superbly lonely, and just wanders. It's a day in the life, you know, a day in the life of Ivan Denisovich. This is a day in the life of Clarissa Dalloway, wandering the streets of London, preparing for a party that even she feels is a vacuous attempt to remain in a society that she hates. She seems to complain about everybody, and I think at the core she's just unhappy. She doesn't love her husband anymore. She doesn't even like her child, and she feels her own child doesn't love her, so why bother? And she keeps reminiscing on all of these other relationships she's had in her past that she now reminisces fondly about, like a dalliance with a man, and and then a love affair with another man before she met her husband, and then even when she was at Bourton, which I'm guessing is a college or a high school or a boarding school. When she was at Bourton, she had a lesbian affair with a friend, and at this party, all of these people from her past seem to converge. Now, the party is the very end of the book, so it's not as if this convergence of people and these confrontations is the main part of the book. The party is the smallest part of the book. But really, the main part is just her wandering London, preparing for this party that she doesn't particularly want to be part of anyway. She just feels like she has to do it. She feels obliged to do it. And I guess it says a lot about roles of women in the 1920s, and I think I spoke a little bit about this in the Kate Chopin book, The Awakening, a few months ago, that it's in that time, and this was just after World War I, and I think Kate Chopin was before World War I, it was like the 1900s, and I think in that strange time where, and now after World War I, with all their men coming back or not, everyone's in so much pain, and everyone has lost someone, and everyone is frustrated, and everyone is angry, but at the same time they're in one of the biggest booms you've ever seen, shortly to be followed by one of the biggest depressions we've ever seen. But for the moment, the country is travelling well, but they're all just so over it. I just found it incredible, and her wit, and I'm not going to say charm because it's not charm, she is cutting, absolutely cutting, the way in which she speaks to and speaks about other people. She would bring me to tears. If she said some of these things to me in a hurtful way, I would be in tears, either in laughter, thinking that she was being funny, or just hurt, because she's such a hurtful person. Like, she says some horrible things about other people, and she truly hates lots of people. But she's just cynical, and this is really good. And I can't believe it. I think this is going to be a book I read over and over and over again. I think I think the next time I read, I'm going to read the physical book, not this one, but something a little bit more substantial, something I can actually hold on to with two hands and not feel like a giant. But I think I'll read it as a physical book, but I really did enjoy the narration of this. It was the perfect society English accent with all the right pronunciations and enunciations, and it was just delightful. So that was great. So that was Mrs. Dalloway. Finished that in lightning record time, and kind of over the top of my other audiobook that I was doing at the same time, which was Silver. And I did a full video on this one already, which was Under the Greenwood Tree by Thomas Hardy. Perfect, beautiful, light, funny, frivolous, very much unlike a Thomas Hardy. So thoroughly enjoyed it, every minute. Just lovely. I'm not going to say anything else about it because there's a whole video on it, and it's just great. Finished it, and I was so happy. So yeah, you can see why I'm not particularly worried about my bad October, because the things I did finish are just great. And I'm still going. I'm only halfway through. The light is playing havoc with that. I'm only halfway through The Woman in White by Wilkie Collins. I am enjoying it. I'm loving it. I'm up to the section where Count Fosco and his wife are such a strange couple. But I'm loving how it shifts perspectives, and how the story about the woman in white is slowly revealing itself, and it's very much unlike a Victorian era piece of fiction, and I'm loving it. It's really good. I'm just going much slower than I probably should. So I'm going to continue reading this in November. Other things I'm going to continue reading in November is Murakami's Killing Commendatore, which I have not progressed at all in October. I got to page about 180, loving it, still loving it, favourite, Murakami, but everything else took over, and that's where I got myself, maybe that's the bit I'm upset about. that I put down Murakami and didn't pick it up. Not about any of the other books that I didn't pick up that were on my TBR. Maybe the bit I'm upset about is Murakami because I love him so much. So maybe that's it. I don't know. So I haven't progressed with Murakami. That's November. Woman in White, I will finish because it's really cool. The other thing I finished is Sula, not part of any of the readathons, but Sula, Toni Morrison, which is, there's a separate video about that. Heartbreaking, but thoroughly enjoyable. November will be, what's it called? I can't remember. Song of Solomon. Thank you. Song of Solomon is in November, and I'll do a intro to that soon. And as for books I tackled in November, that's it. That's all I got. So 2 still in progress, 3 physical books finished, 2 audio books, no, wait, 2 books unfinished, 2 physical books finished, 2 audio books finished, Mrs. Dalloway and My Sister the Serial Killer, and 1 audiobook unfinished, which will be finished within the next day or so because I'm almost done. When I lay it out like that, maybe it's pretty good. Yeah. When I lay it out like that, I'm happy because, as I have already said, the stuff that I read and finished, or will finish, has been great. So good. All the stuff that I didn't even get to, unfortunately I'm not going to do the stuff that was on my TBR this month. I'm not even going to get to it in November. It'll just have to come back up in my TBR whenever, and I'll let you know when that happens. But for now, the stuff I got through, I'm happy, and now I'll move on to November. It's going to be a pretty chill November, and I think I've said this before, it's going to be a reasonably chill November. I think I might do, talking to you, you've convinced me, but I think I might do both. I might do novella November and the other one, non-fiction November. So I'll do a video to let you know what I've chosen in the next day or so. So there'll be some more videos coming very, very soon. I'm going to go. It's been a great video. Really enjoyed just chatting with you all. Thanks. I'll talk to you again soon. Bye.